Hello everyone in the VC, it's Matt, and I hope you're having a good weekend, a good Sunday. I thought I would check in and do a video because it's been ages since I've done one. A couple of people have asked me about George Harrison album reviews, and those will continue someday when I get around to it. I know I've been sort of lax on that, and I need to get to that. I've got a couple more to do on George, and I will get to him, I promise. But today I was going to do something else just based on a couple of videos I saw. Me and Mr. Mayo, Joe, did a video, I believe, this morning asking what your first CD, the first CD you ever bought was. And I don't know if he came up with that. I think it was someone else had done it and he was answering that. And Canadian Studmuffin, Larry, did a video listing his favorite song from every Paul McCartney album, which was thought was a really fun idea. So I thought I would do both of those. So, and also apparently Joe and Larry got into some kind of Donnybrook, and I don't know the details of it, don't really care, but seems to have been rectified, and they're good to go. So that's nice to hear. But first CD, and I don't have it anymore. I don't know. Haven't had it forever, but first CD I bought would have been May of '85, and it was the first Bruce Springsteen album, which is the Greetings from Asbury Park, I believe. So around about 1983, I remember reading Cream magazine, column about these new things called compact discs. Didn't really pay attention to it. And not long after that, I remember being in Peach's record store and seeing up by the checkout counter, they had what appeared to be these CD things, and I looked at them, and there weren't very many of them. There were about 10 or so of them up there. As I remember, it was mainly classical. I think they had Dark Side of the Moon, but otherwise it was mainly classical music, and maybe they had a Steely Dan album. I really can't remember. They were about $30 a piece at that point, and I was just looking at them out of idle curiosity. I didn't have a CD player or anything, and thought, well, that's those CD things, but I'm not spending $30 on a record. And then around about May '85, I got a new stereo, which had a CD player with it, of course. By that time, I really didn't care one way or another about the CD player so much. I just wanted a new stereo to replace my old one. And but I got the stereo and thought I'd go out and buy some records, which I did. And I thought, as long as I'm here, might as well get a CD to play in this newfangled CD player thing. At that time, and this was at Peach's Records again, they had, I think, just like one row of CDs, and the rest of the store was vinyl. It was a big record store. And so I looked around, and there wasn't Beatles and Rolling Stones and all that stuff weren't out on CD at that time, and a lot of stuff wasn't. So the only thing I saw was that Springsteen album, and that was at that point in time. I guess his latest album at that point was Born in the USA. I don't think the 5-album live set had come out yet, but that was the only Springsteen album I didn't have, so I went ahead and picked that up, which isn't the most sonically rich, deep album to listen to on CD, I guess, but that's the one I got. And then the funny thing is that wasn't but a few months later that the store flipped around, where all of a sudden you had a store full of CDs and one or two aisles of vinyl, and then the vinyl got kind of phased out. But even in those days, I remember the Bangles album, Different Light, came out, and I looked for that on CD, but I ended up getting it on vinyl because the CD didn't come out for several months later after the album came out. And of course, then later on, the Beatles came out in '86 or '87 or whatever, in groups of 3. So that was the first CD I got, was Bruce Springsteen's Greeting from Asbury Park. As far as Joe wanting to go to CDs again, not to completely get rid of vinyl, but go to CDs, I'm still mainly a vinyl guy, but I do buy CDs, mainly for the car. Here's the latest one I've got, and it's just because this was 5 cent Denny, if you don't know, she was in Fairport Convention and in Fotheringay and then Solo. And she, one of the great English singers of all time, sadly died at a young age in, I believe, 1978. But great singer. And the thing about these sets, I buy these every once in a while because you get 5 albums and there's all sorts of different groups, but they cost about $15 for 5 CDs, so you really can't beat this. And it's usually their best, their classic albums, all sorts of different groups. So that's CDs. Let's move on to my favorite McCartney songs from each album by Paul McCartney. So we'll start with this one, of course, and I didn't pull them all out because you all know what they look like, and if you don't, you're probably in the wrong place. But we'll start with the McCartney album. My choice would be That Would Be Something, followed closely probably by Every Night. It's the best song on that album. We go on to the Ram album, which is tough because that's such a great album. There's so many songs, so many great songs. But I went with Backseat of My Car because that's one of my favorite, and that would probably be in my top 5 of top 5 all-time Paul McCartney songs. Wildlife, I'm going to go with, this is another one where it's kind of a tie, but I went with Tomorrow. I could have also easily picked the title track, but both great songs, but Tomorrow, I think, gets it just a little bit. We move on to Red Rose Speedway, and I'm going to pick Get on the Right Thing, even though Big Barn Bed could have been a worthy contender, that it's right there. And oddly enough, with that album, I've been listening to that a lot because, as you know, the big Super Duper box set just came out here last month, and sort of rediscovering it. And it's an album that was not a favorite of mine, but I have, it's kind of grown on me, I'll say, especially with all the bonus tracks and extra things. But one song that I used to not like very much, but that's growing on me quite a bit, is Little Lamb Dragonfly. Still not sure that I'm there yet, but I'm starting to like it more than I did. But best song on there, I'd say Get on the Right Thing. Band on the Run, that would be Jet. I'm kind of with Larry Graves on the title track. It's a good song, I like it, but there's something about it that just doesn't quite, almost gets there, but just doesn't quite. I think Jet's the best song. I could cheat a little bit and say Hell on Wheels, but that was only on the American and not on the British version, so we'll go with Jet. Venus and Mars, my favorite song on that is actually a twofer because it's the title Venus and Mars and Rock Show. It's a great opening, and I love Venus and Mars, love Rock Show. A lot of great songs. That's a great album. Speed of Sound, that's a pretty lousy album, but I'll go with Beware My Love. The couple other songs I like on there really Must Do Something About It and She's My Baby, and otherwise, there's really not much in anything on that album that's any good. London Town, I'm going to go with the hit single, With a Little Luck. Just always like that song, and it's another good album. I like London Town quite a bit. There's several songs on there I like, but With a Little Luck would be the best of the bunch, in my opinion. Back to the Egg, probably my favorite McCartney album after Ram, which would make it my second favorite McCartney album, in other words. So many good songs on there that I could pick, but I'm going to go with Old Siam Sir, just a great rocker. McCartney 2, another one of my favorite of his albums. And I really like Coming Up, but I do like the studio version, but I like the live version. I prefer the live version, which is not on the album. It's on the bonus 45 that came with the album. In America, anyway. I don't know if it did in England. But although I do like the studio Coming Up also, my favorite song on this album is Temporary Secretary. Just a loony, goofy song, and love it to death. And that's another one that would probably be in my top 5 all-time McCartney songs. We move on to Tug of War. Another great album, several really good songs on it. My favorite of that bunch is Ballroom Dancing, which, keep repeating myself, I think that would probably be in my top 5 McCartney songs of all time. Pipes of Peace, and not very good album. Title track I like all right. So Bad is not, it's pretty good as well, but title track I guess would be the best of the bunch of of a bunch of songs on a not very good album. Broad Street, another pretty bad album by him, unfortunately. My favorite song would be Corridor Music. No, that's not right. No More Lonely Nights, of course, would be my favorite off that, though. Not Such a Bad Boy Anymore is also a pretty good song, and that's really about it on that album. Press to Play is an album that's not well liked by many. I actually think it's a little bit better than most people think. It's not a great album, but it does have its moments. Um, it's also got some pretty crap stuff on it, but it does have a few highlights if you're willing to invest the time. But Footprints off Press to Play for me. We get to Chopa Bopa, CCB, whatever the thing's called, the Russian album. I put a question mark because that is probably my least favorite McCartney album. If you go in studio, it'd probably be Wings at the Speed of Sound. But there's like one song on there that I like. The rest of it's just sort of okay and random at best. And I can't remember which one it was, and I wasn't in the mood to listen to it this morning to refresh my memory. I think it's Don't Get 'Em Around Much Anymore. I could be wrong, but we'll just go with a question mark on that. Flowers in the Dirt, You Want Me To would be the best song on that. Follow-up would be My Brave Face. Some good stuff on that album. Off the Ground, another kind of overlooked album that I think is a really good one. Best song on that is, I think me and Mr. Mayo is in complete agreement with me on this one. It's Peace in the Neighborhood, another one of my favorite McCartney songs. I just love it. Sounds like a great Curtis Mayfield soul song from 1970-71, but just a nice song. And the close runner-up would be Mistress and Maid, which is yet another of the McCartney Elvis Costello collaborations. I wish they would have worked together more than they did. I think they could have they did some really good stuff. They could have done some more stuff. And it makes me think, wouldn't it have been really cool had the Traveling Wilburys instead of what I call the deadweight twins of Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne had George, Dylan, and then Elvis Costello, and maybe the second guy could be somebody else cool, Joe Strummer, Tom Waits, or somebody like that, instead of boring old Petty. But that didn't happen, so moving right along. Flaming Pie we get to. An album that a lot of people highly regard. Good album, I guess, but it's one that I've always been kind of lukewarm on. But Great Day is undeniable, really good song. And there are some other good songs on there, but overall, I just think that album is so-so at best. But, yeah, we move on to Run Devil Run. Coquette, I think, is the best one on that. That's a pretty good album. It's a much better covers album than the Russian album was. Driving Rain, I go with Rinse the Raindrops, the long song, just because I like the guitar on it, the guitar bits on it. I almost didn't answer this one because I have that album. I haven't listened to it that often, that I'm not really as familiar with it as I should be, in other words. So there's a lot, I was reading through the song listings, and there's a lot of the songs that I just couldn't remember off the top of my head how they go, to be honest. It's another album that people don't like, generally speaking, and the few times I've played it, certainly it's not a great album, but there were a few things on it that I did like, all right. So it's no great shakes. It's better than Wings at the Speed of Sound, and probably better than Pipes of Peace, at least. Chaos is another highly rated album by many that I think is very well done and very nice, and also pretty boring album. But I went with English Tea. It's just a lot of the stuff on this album kind of sounds the same, and I never could get into it too much. But English Tea's all right. Vanity Fair and Jenny Wren are also pretty good, I guess. Memory Almost Full, I love this album. It's a great one. There's a lot of good songs to pick from on here, so it was hard to choose, but I went with Only Mama Knows, a really good rocker. Plenty of other great songs on there. Kisses on the Bottom, not a very good album either. Ringo actually outdid Paul in this area with doing the album a standards route. But Inchworm is kind of okay, and My Good Friend the Milkman is alright. The rest of the album's pretty dull, to my ears anyway. New, great album with a lot of great songs to pick from. Went with Queenie Eye. Just always liked that song a lot. And I forgot Electric Arguments, so I'm going to go sing The Changes on Electric Arguments. That's another really good album with a bunch of great songs to pick from. And we wind up with the latest album, Egypt Station, and my choice is one that I seem to be the only person in the world that likes this song, because everyone else just sort of thinks it's really bad or just fair at best, but I love it to death. Caesar Rock is my favorite on that. There's a bunch of I mean, I Don't Know, Come On To Me, Back in Brazil, Dominoes, Despite Repeated Warnings, all great songs. Good album. I played it a week or two ago and hadn't heard it in a while. It still holds up. So, along his greatest, probably not, but a good solid album. But yeah, Caesar Rock for me. So that's my favorite McCartney songs from each album. And if you feel like doing your response video or just listing what you think down in the comments, or not watching this video and ignoring it altogether, works for me. So have a good Sunday, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.